He had always been a dreamer, this young man. From his childhood days, he held on to a vision of the future, a future where he'd own a car. Not just any car, but a sleek, powerful machine that would be his chariot to freedom. He dreamt of cruising down open roads, the wind whipping through his hair, the world a blur of colors outside his window. The car represented more than just a possession. It was a symbol of his aspirations, his ticket to a life filled with adventure and joy. He worked tirelessly, saving every penny, his eyes fixed on the prize that shimmered in his mind's eye. The day he finally bought the car, it felt surreal. The weight of the keys in his palm, the new car smell that filled his nostrils, the gleaming exterior that reflected his awestruck face. It was a moment of pure bliss. He had achieved his dream, tasted the sweetness of his labor. Every drive was an exhilarating experience, every turn of the wheel a confirmation of his hard work. Life felt complete, his future brimming with promise. Little did he know, fate had other plans, a cruel twist of events lurking around the corner. His dreams, once so vibrant and clear, were about to be shrouded in a fog of guilt and despair. The car, his prized possession, would soon become a painful reminder of the night everything changed. It was a night like any other, or so he thought. The sky was dark, the stars barely visible through the city's haze. He was driving home after a celebratory dinner with friends, the thrill of his new car still fresh. He felt invincible, his senses dulled by the excitement coursing through his veins. Maybe he was driving a little too fast, lost in his own world. But at that moment, it didn't seem to matter. Not until it was too late. A figure suddenly darted across the road, a blur in the periphery of his vision. He slammed on the brakes, the screech of tires a jarring sound that pierced the night. But it was too late. The impact sent shockwaves through his body, the windshield spiderwebbing with the force of the collision. His heart pounded in his chest, a drumbeat of fear against his ribs. Disoriented and trembling, he stumbled out of the car. The world seemed to spin, the flashing red and blue lights of approaching sirens only adding to the chaos. There, lying in the pool of light from his car, was a young woman. Her eyes were closed, her chest barely moving. Time seemed to grind to a halt, each tick of the clock an eternity. A cold dread crept into his limbs, paralyzing him with fear. The accident made the headlines. Witnesses claimed he was speeding, that he hadn't been paying attention. The police investigation was ongoing, the threat of charges hanging over his head like a dark cloud. But it was the guilt that gnawed at him, sharper than any legal repercussions. The image of the young woman, her lifeless eyes staring into the void, was seared into his memory. He couldn't escape it, the memory haunting his waking hours and invading his dreams. He withdrew from life, isolating himself from friends and family. Their words of comfort felt hollow, meaningless in the face of his overwhelming guilt. He had taken a life, his recklessness snuffing out the future of another human being. How could he possibly atone for such a sin? How could he ever forgive himself? He tried to find solace in sleeping pills, hoping to escape the nightmares that plagued him. But even in the darkness behind his eyelids, he couldn't outrun the truth. The guilt followed him, a constant shadow that darkened his every thought. He was trapped in a prison of his own making, the bars forged from remorse and despair. One day, in the depths of his despair, he stumbled into a church. The quiet serenity of the space, the soft glow of the stained glass windows, provided a stark contrast to the turmoil within him. He knelt in a pew, the weight of his sin pressing down on him. As the sunlight streamed through the colorful glass, painting the floor in hues of hope and forgiveness, he began to pray. He didn't know the words, hadn't prayed in years, but he poured his heart out nonetheless. He confessed his guilt, his remorse, his desperate need for redemption. He begged for forgiveness, not just from a higher power, but from himself. And in the silence that followed his whispered pleas, he felt a glimmer of hope ignite within him. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but a slow, arduous journey. He started attending church regularly, finding comfort in the rituals and the sense of community. He sought solace in prayer, finding a path to channel his guilt into something meaningful. He knew he could never bring back the life he had taken, but he could dedicate his life to honoring her memory.